just got assigned a rhetorical analysis essay. I have an ice cream headache and my heart feels like burning.
Is this you after being assigned a rhetorical analysis essay? Really? Well, then I can help you, because none of my students ever feel this way after being assigned rhetorical analysis, and after watching this video, neither will you. The rhetorical analysis essay on the AP test or on your first year writing course can be daunting. Today, I'll teach you the same secret process that I teach all my students who eat 5s on the AP exam all the time. You might also want to watch some of the other videos on my series on rhetorical analysis, which you can find on my channel here. When you write the AP Language and Composition exam, if you spend the same amount of time on it as you spend on the rest of your essays on the exam, you're going to have 40 minutes to writing, so you're going to need to move fast. You're going to need to internalize the process that I'm explaining to you today and move fast without stopping or questioning yourself, because you're not going to have time for self-doubt. Think of the essay as being divided into 2 sections, pre-writing and writing. You're going to be given a piece of scratch paper for brainstorming. You might as well use it. If you pre-write, that'll help you by helping you get clear about your arguments so you have a coherent structure while you're writing, and you'll also feel more confident. Your first step will be to simply read the prompt. You have to understand what the rhetorical analysis essay wants. For example, here's a prompt from a recent AP Language and Composition exam. The following passage is excerpted from The Great Influenza by John M. Barry, an author and historian. The book, published in 2004, is an account of the 1918 flu epidemic. In this excerpt, Barry writes about scientists and their research. Read the passage carefully. Write an essay that analyzes the rhetorical choices Barry makes to convey his message about scientific research. Now, besides the information that is specific to John Barry in the essay you're about to read, the rest of the prompt is typical of all the AP rhetorical analysis prompts that you're going to get on either the AP test or from your college professor. No matter what work you're studying on the AP rhetorical analysis essay, the prompt is going to ask you to analyze the rhetorical choices that the writer makes in order to persuade the audience according to their argument. Reading the prompt, however, is super useful because it'll help you understand the rhetorical situation of the essay that you're about to read. The rhetorical situation can be defined as the historical, cultural, and social context in which any given work is produced. If we remember that any piece of writing is ultimately produced in order to persuade, then the rhetorical situation is simply the situation in which the persuasion is happening. It's useful to understand the rhetorical situation for 2 reasons. 1, demonstrating a sense of rhetorical situation will help you score higher on the AP exam or on your college essay. Second, since any persuasion happens within a rhetorical situation, all the choices that a writer is making happen based on the rhetorical situation. I have a separate video that can help you understand rhetorical situations, but I can briefly tell you that you can use the mnemonic device of SpaceCat in order to understand the rhetorical situation. In that device, S stands for speaker, P for purpose, A for audience, C for context, E for exigence, C for choices, A for appeals, T for tone. The speaker is, well, the person doing the speaking and the writing, and everything that they imply about themselves through their tone and their word choices and how they're trying to persuade. The purpose is the overall purpose of that essay or speech that you're reading. It's what the speaker wants to persuade the audience of. The audience is who the speaker is talking to. That might be a room full of specific people. It might be a large group of general readers. The prompt will tell you. The context is the basic historical context and all the social factors going on at the time that the thing is written. The exigence, however, is the more immediate situation. So in this case, our speaker is, as we're told, John Barry, who's an author and a historian. We know that this work is published in 2004. So we know this book is written not so far back into the past. It's possible that even though this book is published 20 years before our current video and COVID-19 hasn't happened yet. He might still be writing to an audience who's anxious about epidemics, because we've been anxious about epidemics for some time in American society. We're going to assume that his audience is generally well-educated readers. The context, again, is all the historical circumstances that would have been going on in 2004, which is, again, far enough in the past that he wouldn't have lived through the COVID-19 epidemic. And his exigence must be that he wants to persuade people of something about science right now. Some prompts will tell you specifically what the author's purpose is. This particular prompt only told us that Barry is conveying a message about scientific research, so you're going to have some leeway how you conceive his purpose. This is all I would do with the rhetorical situation right now. I might write down Space Cat and fill in all the details that are necessary here to understand the rhetorical situation. But I would keep this rhetorical situation in mind as I was reading. I would know that the speaker made no rhetorical choices without considering the rhetorical situation. Your next step is simply to read the passage that you're being given to analyze. You can get a sense of what a passage might look like from what's showing on your screen. This is maybe about half of the length of what you might be asked to analyze. You'll generally be asked to analyze about a full page of writing. And you should read and you should annotate this piece of writing for a couple of things. One of them being an understanding of the writer's purpose, another one being the general structure of their argument, and finally, I would mark rhetorical choices that I found interesting. Rhetorical choices are the things that the writer does in order to persuade the reader. They might be things like repetition or use of metaphors or exclamation points. We'll get into that a few minutes later in this video. And if you don't understand what rhetorical choices are, I have another video for that. Now, after you've annotated, you need to organize your annotations in some way so you can start to make sense of them. I would recommend sketching out a simple table like this one that has columns for rhetorical choices, evidence, and effects on purpose. I've also added a spot where you can write down purpose so you know to include that later. I would then simply fill out my table based on what I've annotated here. I've filled in a sample here of this table. If you were annotating, your annotations would look different from mine, and your table would also look differently from mine. But I've simply shown 2 cases of repetition. I've put the words that are being repeated, and I've put their effect on purpose here. I've also listed other ideas like the contrasting principles, because he lists certainty and uncertainty quite closely to each other, which makes it also an example of juxtaposition, and he might be startling his reader by mentioning uncertainty right after he's mentioning certainty. I've also mentioned an allusion here because the author early on speaks about Claude Bernard, who I can see as another scientist who praises uncertainty as a scientific principle, therefore giving some credibility to this author's argument that uncertainty is valuable. And I've also made a note about diction. I'm calling this a language of labor, but words like grunt, tedious, and figuring out are words that you would typically attribute to blue-collar positions, like maybe a plumber or somebody who works with their hands a lot. And the effect of this might just be to undermine the stereotypes that people normally would have about scientists and the work they do. And finally, I'm putting down the purpose here is that the writer is trying to persuade readers that, contrary to their expectations, successful scientific inquiry requires accepting uncertainty. Now, I have everything I need to start writing this essay, including my thesis. Yes. Well, now you're ready to move on to the second stage, which is actually writing. In writing your essay, you're going to follow the same structure that you would use really for any academic essay. Your essay will have an introductory paragraph that ends with a thesis sentence. It'll have one or more body paragraphs. The number of body paragraphs depends on the number of claims in your essay that you forecast in your thesis, and you'll end with a conclusion sentence. You're going to want to analyze at least 2 rhetorical choices, because that is the number of choices that you need to analyze in order to score well on the AP test or to get a good grade on your college essay. So that means you're going to have at least 4 total paragraphs: the introduction and the thesis, 2 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. Today's helper is the Licky Boy. If you think it is easy to make a YouTube video with the kitten sitting on your desk, fapping at all your chords, then you would love help from this helper. He loves to sit here and he loves to watch YouTube videos be made. He is a big baby helper. He likes to get his chin scratched and sit around and watch all the videos get made. You wouldn't even know he's here unless you were me. And you had to edit out every time he knocked your microphone down. In the introduction, you should include information about the rhetorical situation that's going to be relevant about the rhetorical choices you're explaining later. It also might be helpful to have background information on the subject if it helps you put the speech in a historical, cultural, and social context for your readers. Your conclusions should recap your argument using different language than your thesis and your body paragraphs. And it's great if it could end in giving some kind of bigger picture perspective on the importance of the author being successful in their persuasion in the essay that you're reading. Now, I've basically told you how to pre-write this essay and the structure of the essay that you're going to need to write. Let me tell you 3 other things. One is the structure of your thesis. Your thesis should be easy to fill out after you've completed the pre-writing table that I explained earlier, but it should still have a specific structure in order for it to make sense. Basically, your thesis needs to read something like, the speaker uses blank rhetorical choices to persuade blank being the audience, that blank being the purpose. In this case, since I have my table already filled out, it's easy for me to write this thesis. Barry uses repetition, illusion, and the language of labor to persuade 21st century readers that, contrary to popular belief, scientific inquiry requires accepting uncertainty. That's a thesis. Now that's a thesis. The thesis right is particularly important if you're taking the AP Language and Composition exam because it's 1 full point out of 6 on the rubric. The next row on the rubric is about the evidence and commentary. If you've got 2 rhetorical choices in your essay, if you provide evidence to support all those rhetorical choices, and you consistently explain how this evidence supports a line of reasoning in your essay, then you're going to score all 4 possible points. In order to make sure you have a line of reasoning, just make sure that your body paragraphs match the structure of your thesis and try to add transitional words in between your paragraphs so it doesn't look like you're just making a list. If you can connect the ideas between paragraphs, it will only help you. A final concept that I wanted to discuss with you is sophistication. Sophistication is the last possible point on the AP Language and Composition exam. It'll also be a mark of a sophisticated essay for your college professor. There are a few ways to gain sophistication, as shown on this AP rubric. You can either explain the significance or relevance of the writer's rhetorical choices given the rhetorical situation. You could either explain a purpose or function of the passage's complexities and tensions, or you could be employing a style that is consistently vivid and persuasive. Out of all of these, employing a style that is consistently vivid and persuasive is probably actually the hardest one to achieve, because it basically means you have to write a really good essay, making your own effective rhetorical choices and vivid language and coherent argument. This might be difficult to do, especially if it's under timed conditions. So you might be best off simply making sure you keep the rhetorical situation in mind as you're explaining rhetorical choices. And if you can explain complexities or tensions in a part of the passage, that's excellent. And that's it. I've just told you how to get a 6 on this rhetorical analysis essay, and this can go a long way toward you getting a 5 on the AP Language and Composition exam when all your scores are totaled and averaged out. Just make sure you first pre-write and annotate for rhetorical choices, the rhetorical situation, and purpose, that you brainstorm the ideas from your annotation into some kind of table that helps you organize your ideas, that you then use that table to make an effective thesis, and that you then correctly structure your essay as I explained to you in this video. The rhetorical analysis essay is one of the hardest essays you can write on the AP Language exam or in your college course. In fact, it's so challenging that the average score for this essay is a full point lower than the average score for all the other essays on the AP test. I hope this video will help you grow in confidence as you write and help you gain a better score or grade. If you have questions about the rhetorical analysis essay that I haven't covered, just drop them in the comments below and I'll answer them for you. Finally, I plan on making some additional videos with some more hands-on examples of writing, so please subscribe so you can get access to those videos. Thanks for watching Zubify. Come back for more Zubify.